Okay, so let me go over the solution here. Um, so what we wanted to do is do a sort of last name in ascending order, and then if you clicked on the same letter, it would end up flipping the sort order. So if it was in ascending, it would go to descending. If it was in descending, it would go to ascending, and so on and so forth. And when you switch to letters, you always go back into ascending order. So if I'm doing something like this, the first thing that I'm thinking about is what additional information do I need to pass to the model? Do I need to pass to the controller so that I can create my model with everything being in the correct order? And so the first thing that I did was to go in and create a property of my model called ascending. Okay. The next step was to say, hey, look, if I click on the contacts link, that's the main link, I always want that to be in ascending order, right? I already have it set up. If we end up going to the layout here, I already have it set up so that I had it set up so that the prefix was A. So all I did here was I added another route value, which ascending is true. Now, we could make this fancier and change our routing so that it would look like contact / page A / ascending or / descending. For now, since it's not, there's nothing in the route table that says what you should do with ascending, it'll just pass it as a parameter. Okay, so if we just ended up doing that, now I have this completed anyway, but let me actually just show you what if you just ended up doing that, what you would see is that if you clicked on this link, right, if you look at the URL, it's always going in ascending order. Okay, so the next thing was to actually go in and put some logic in my view. Okay, again, I'm not, the last thing I'm going to touch is the controller at this point. And so if I end up going to my view, I just put a little change here, which was that, again, I'm dealing with my route values so that when I end up creating my action link, so these are the letters where there are no contacts. Again, we don't have that because we're randomly generating a lot of these. You could test it and basically take a letter out if you want to, but all of ours are going to be active. So I've got my model, letter is live, right? And I'm creating this link. I already have some logic that deals with when the letter is selected because I end up making the class of that list item selected. And I'm using the same logic here where I've got this other parameter, so I have these two parameters here. Prefix is letter, we had that before. I had another one ascending, okay? And what I'm saying is, look, if the current letter is selected, okay, then change the ascending value in the link to whatever it's not. So whatever the ascending value is, the Boolean value, I'm going to flip it. Otherwise, it's always going to be true. So for the letter that's selected, the link is always going to be, it's going to basically flip the ascending value. And for the other ones, it's always going to be true. And if I just went to test that, now again, I have this built already. And if I just went to test that, what I would find out, again, I'm sorting the values, but you wouldn't end up seeing that yet. The other thing that I did is I'm just displaying that ascending value so that I could see it. So, if I click on here, right, ascending is true, right? If I click on A is clicked, it's currently ascending, I'll see that it goes to descending, right? It's basically flipping the value. And if I go to another one, I'll see that ascending is true. So, I mean, one way to sort of test for this is, if things weren't working, you could, view your page source. And if I make this a little bigger here, you should be able to see that the one that's selected, it's going to, flip what the value is. Must be true now, because the next time it's clicked, it's going to be false. And the other ones are always going to be true. And the icon, the link that's on the top of the page, right, that's always going to be A and always going to be true. And so the only thing to do after you do that is to use, and I think we used it, although I'm not positive that we used it. And what I did here was I've got this, I actually put a breakpoint here. So this is what I had before, where it's basically just getting the contacts based on the prefix. And now I'm doing the same thing, but I'm putting this in a variable called data. Okay, I'll see that this basically is giving me an enumerable list of contacts. And what's sort of interesting about this is that it's not really doing anything at this point. It's going to end up doing something here when I end up taking the data and putting it to a list. This is not really much of an issue here, but if you're doing SQL statements, you'd find out that this, after executing this line, it wouldn't end up hitting the database. It's only when you do toList where it's got to enumerate over the data that you're getting that it's going to make it SQL query. And we'll spend a fair amount of time on that. So what I'm going to do here is just say, and again, one thing that's really critical here is that instead of having a lot of parameters that you pass to your controller action, here you basically just say, hey, look, this is expecting this model. And what you end up doing is that you're passing a couple of default parameters, so this model will end up getting created. Again, if you don't pass any parameters to the model's going to be null. But the second that the model binder goes and sees that there's there are values in the URL or in a form or something like that, which are considered route values, it'll end up automatically creating. Model binding will create this value. Again, you're not calling this method directly. It's the MVC framework that's calling it based on the route. So if model is ascending, I set my contacts property and I sort by last name to list. Okay. Otherwise, with link, you could do an order by descending, and basically all you're doing, if you're ordering a list, you have to say what property you're ordering by. Another thing is, if you want to order by multiple properties, you could say order by this lambda expression, then by this lambda expression. It would look something like this. Then by, and you could put another, let's say you wanted to order by last name, and then within that, order by first name, would look something like that, right? But we're not doing that. We're just going to order by the last name. So we just have this. And if you look at the results, which I showed you before, make sure this builds, you end up getting this solution, which is in fact, and again, I put this here. I think ideally what we would do is get an icon to show that this was sorting in ascending order, and now it goes to descending order. Again, in a real world application, you're gonna end up doing sorting on multiple columns in this table. That's something we could do. I was actually thinking about doing an example like that, but I think either I would probably save that for one of the more advanced classes, or the truth be told, there's some controls out there that do a really good job of doing this. So there's some controls that are pretty widely used that do a nice job of creating sortable grids. So there's a little bit of work that goes in here, but the nice thing about it is that you get a URL. Again, we can make this a little bit more of a vanity URL by changing our routing, and it wouldn't be all that tricky to do. I mean, in fact, I'm going to leave it like this for the moment. I mean, but we could have a / true or false or something like that. And in fact, if we wanted to, we could probably even pass a value like ascending and descending, but we'd have to change our model at that point a little bit. It wouldn't be the toughest thing to do. So that's going to be it for this assignment. So I'm going to post the next video that I'm going to post is going to be sort of just a quick look at how, when we ended up doing this last week, about how we can do editing, how we could look at the details, and how we could do delete. We're going to end up using the scaffolding to do this a little bit quickly, so we're not going through all this again. A lot of this I think is review, but I think it's definitely worth folks seeing it for a second time. All right, thank you.